Give us $3,000 for our baby gift?
You're such an old hag now. Breaking up was the right call?
The two who betrayed me spouted whatever selfish words they pleased. But I was no longer shaken by their words.
Oh, haven't you guys heard yet?
Because it's already certain that both of them are going to lose everything. My name is Emily Carter. I'm a 30-year-old homemaker, or rather, I used to be a homemaker. As for my family, they may be exceptional, but I've always considered myself pretty ordinary, living a reasonably happy life. I think that was largely thanks to my husband, Grant. Grant and I met in college, hit it off through shared hobbies in a club, and eventually started dating. It was me who suggested we join the same company after graduation. Grant, who had been a bit careless in his relationships with women before we started dating, seemed to settle down once he became a working adult. Our relationship didn't change over time. It grew deeper, feeling like family, which led to our decision to marry.
I can't imagine life without you, Emily. Stay with me forever.
When he said that in such a reassuring voice, I was so happy I accepted his proposal immediately. Even my father, who was often away on overseas business trips, made an effort to attend our wedding, which made me truly happy. After we got married, we moved into the house my father gave us and started our life together. I became a homemaker and worked hard to make our house a great place to live with Grant. The time spent like that was happy, but there was one thing that bothered me. It was the existence of my younger sister, Holly.
It's not fair, Emily. You get Grant and this amazing house. Can't you give them to me?
Holly, you're as playful as ever, no matter how old you get.
Holly often visited us on weekends. She's 2 years younger than me, but with her youthful energy, she'd interact with Grant in such a lively way that people often thought they were siblings. If it were just that, I wouldn't have minded. However, Holly has a few bad habits. One is her tendency to lose interest quickly. With the exception of a few rare cases, she has never been able to stick with anything for long. In the past, it was her studies, and now it's her jobs, which she quickly gives up on. She has hopped from one job to another and now refers to herself as a freelancer, which might sound decent, but in reality, even those freelance jobs are handled carelessly, and she quits them just as quickly. Holly is able to maintain her lifestyle because our parents constantly indulge her. Holly's able to sustain this lifestyle because our parents pamper her endlessly. She's always maintained a charming, lovable appearance that wins people over, even in her mid-20s. Holly was adored by our parents. Even after graduating from college and leaving her first job, they continued to send Sarah financial support without fail, allowing her to enjoy living alone in a rented apartment. They'd scold her when she went too far, but for the most part, they gave in to her whims. What makes it worse is that Holly fully understands her own charm. She has often used it to manipulate those around her ever since we were young. That is another one of Holly's bad habits. But for me, her worst habit is wanting everything I have.
Emily's things are always better.
When we were kids, even if our parents bought us similar clothes, toys, or snacks, Holly would cry, insisting she wanted mine. Even if they were identical, she claimed something was different. As her older sister, I always ended up reluctantly giving in. I was able to accept the typical words that I should be patient because I genuinely found Holly adorable. But that was when we were kids. As we grew older, her selfishness became harder to tolerate. To make matters worse, Holly once stole my boyfriend back in high school.
Well, he's just so amazing, you know? Love is free, isn't it?
But her relationship with him didn't even last a month. This was due to her tendency to quickly lose interest, but her bad habit of wanting what I have has remained unchanged since we were little. That's why I had a lingering fear. I was afraid that once again, my sister might take something precious to me, specifically my Grant. At the same time, I thought there was no way that would happen. This wasn't a high school romance. Grant and I were a married couple. Surely Holly wouldn't do something so blatantly inappropriate, and Grant wouldn't fall for it anyway. However, my belief in that common sense was shattered by the two of them in the worst way possible. One day, I had to travel abroad to attend my friend's wedding. Her partner had been working overseas for a long time, and they couldn't wait until he returned to get married. There was a party planned for the day after the ceremony, and they had invited me to join and enjoy the celebration. It's going to be a 2-night, 4-day trip. Is the house going to be okay?
Oh yeah, sure.
What's going on? You've been staring at your phone a lot lately. At the time, Grant never let go of his phone and was always fiddling with it whenever he had a moment.
Oh no, it's just that work has been sending a lot of requests. You know it'd be rude to leave them waiting.
I see. Well, are you sure everything's fine?
It's a wedding, right? Don't worry, I've got it covered. Just leave the house to me.
I wondered for a moment if he was even listening to me, but it seemed I was just overthinking. Even so, Grant wasn't great at household chores, so I left for the trip with a slight feeling of unease. However, something unexpected happened. Right after the ceremony, my friend suddenly fell ill. It turned out she was pregnant. Because of her condition, the party planned for the next day was canceled. Since there was no reason for me to stay, I immediately arranged to return home. In the rush, I forgot to let Grant know. It wasn't until I landed back home that I realized my mistake, just as the sun was starting to rise. Since it was a quiet weekend morning, I decided not to call and simply headed home. What? I couldn't help but let out a sound of surprise when I reached my house. There, next to Grant's shoes, was a pair of women's shoes that I recognized immediately. And those shoes were familiar to me. With a sense of dread clouding my heart, I walked through the quiet house and opened the bedroom door. At that moment, I froze, stunned and shaken to my core.
What? Emily?
Why are you here?
There, lying in bed without a stitch of clothing, were Grant and my sister, Holly. What is the meaning of this? The words came out in a voice so cold it startled even me. They were just as shocked as I was, but after a moment, Holly was the first to speak.
What does it look like? Grant and I have fallen in love, haven't we?
Holly smiled at me, as if to provoke me further. Called out by her, Grant shifted awkwardly, but soon adopted the same defiant attitude.
Yeah, I feel bad, but Holly is so cute.
She's my sister. Do you even realize this is cheating? Grant gave me a sheepish grin that quickly fueled my anger. Seeing my reaction, Holly chuckled mockingly.
Oh, look, she's seriously mad. It's been a while since I've seen that high and mighty expression crap.
You're telling me this is all for fun?
Maybe a little, but it's mostly because I like Grant.
As if to prove her point, she leaned seductively against him. Grant's face showed the same careless expression I'd seen before we started dating, clearly not bothered by any of this.
Come on, stop it. We just got caught cheating.
This isn't cheating. We're serious about each other, right?
Yeah, you're right. It's not cheating.
The two of them exchanged words as if I weren't even there, looking entirely unbothered. Watching this, I felt my eyes start to well up with tears. I tried my hardest not to cry in front of the two of them, but Holly spoke to me in a mocking tone.
Since you figured it out, let me just say it. Why don't you leave Grant?
What?
Well, Grant is head over heels for me. If you end it now, it might save you some heartbreak.
As I stood there, stunned into silence, Holly continued with her barrage.
Actually, I might even be pregnant with Grant's child.
What did you just say? Shocked by her statement, I couldn't help but glare at Grant. However, he remained completely unfazed, acting as if nothing had happened.
Well, if you'd had kids, I might have backed off. But you were dragging your feet, so that's on you.
She's right. Maybe Emily and I just weren't a good match?
Oh, Grant, you're so mean.
As they laughed together, I finally reached my breaking point. Without letting them see my tears, I bowed my head and left the house. That was the only small act of defiance I could manage. And so, I ended up divorcing Grant. After submitting the divorce papers and leaving the house, I moved back to my parents' home for the time being. That said, no one was actually living there. My father was still frequently overseas for important business, and my mother often accompanied him to support his work. I had been entrusted with the management of the house and was told I could use it however I pleased if needed, so I decided to take advantage of that offer this time. Once I settled into my parents' house, the first thing I did was start looking for a job. I was deeply depressed and honestly didn't feel like doing anything, but the thought of being laughed at by those two was unbearable. After using every possible connection to job hunt, it didn't take long for me to find a company willing to hire me. The only problem was that the company wasn't entirely unrelated to the one where Grant and I had worked together before, but I figured the chances of running into him would be low. I decided to put that aside and threw myself into my work. At that time, I was so focused and intense that I likely came off as intimidating to those around me. Yet, even during that time, there was a man who cared about me. That man was Ryan Brooks, a coworker. He helped me get familiar with various aspects of the company after I joined, and through that connection, we ended up working together often. Because of our close working relationship, Ryan always seemed to look out for me. At first, I thought it was just because he didn't want our shared tasks to fall behind.
Well, the thing is, I kind of ended up falling for you without even realizing it.
According to Ryan, he was drawn to me because, despite seeming like I was under a lot of pressure, I never lashed out at those around me and approached my work with sincerity. When he confessed this with an embarrassed smile, he seemed completely different from Grant, lacking an air of dependability. However, the way his gaze met mine was soft and filled with kindness. Moved by Ryan's sincerity, I decided to marry him after only a brief period of dating. When I shared my circumstances with him, he even worried whether he was good enough for me. But I reassured him that it was precisely because he was who he was that I wanted to be with him, and we successfully got married. For a while, we lived together at my parents' house. Around that time, 2 years after I had left the house, I received a message from Holly, with whom I had maintained only minimal contact. She said she wanted to return home to give birth and asked me to leave the house.
I heard about it, but she's pretty selfish.
That's just the kind of person she is. She probably couldn't stand the thought of me living here with Ryan. To be honest, I wasn't thrilled about it, but since I was married to Ryan and living in the house, I had already informed Holly and Grant about it. They didn't react much at the time, but perhaps enough time had passed for Holly to feel the need to assert dominance over me again. Holly likely felt a sense of superiority every time she took something of mine, and that exhilaration might have been irresistible for her. The idea of giving birth at home was probably just an excuse. In any case, I told her it wasn't a decision I could make alone, and we agreed to discuss it at the house.
Hey sis, long time no see. Wow, you've aged, haven't you?
As soon as we met at the entrance, Holly said that and laughed. Her belly was clearly swollen, showing that her due date was approaching. I led Holly and Grant, who had accompanied her, to the living room. Ryan prepared tea and sweets for them, but neither of them said a word of thanks and simply sat down with minimal greetings. So, what happened to that pregnancy you mentioned before?
Oh, that. Turns out it was just a misunderstanding.
Holly said that and laughed without a hint of remorse. She must have made it up to unsettle me, but now it didn't matter.
Well, anyway, as I said on the phone, the two of you need to leave quickly. Oh, and I expect a $3,000 baby gift.
Her condescending words made me grimace. Noticing my expression, Grant looked at me like he was staring at something filthy on the street.
You've really turned into an old hag. Breaking up with you was the right choice.
Totally.
Grant and Holly laughed heartily, openly mocking me. But honestly, I wasn't even angry. By this point, their fate was all but sealed. Soon, they were going to lose everything. Laughing so disgracefully like that. If Dad were here, he'd be furious. That's why I simply gave the two of them a calm warning.
Who cares? They're not here anyway. Even if they were, they wouldn't get mad at me. Unlike you, I'm loved by them.
Grant, even though we're divorced, I was your wife. Don't forget that Dad hates when people lack basic respect and manners.
If they're not here, they can't complain.
With sloppy, careless expressions, the two of them chuckled. Ryan, watching them, calmly spoke.
You didn't hear?
What do you mean?
Holly asked just as the door next to the living room opened.
What?
Why are they here?
The people who walked through the door were none other than our parents. Their overseas business trip had wrapped up, and they were set to return to the US around this time. After receiving Holly's message, I adjusted the schedule for the meeting accordingly. Seeing the two of them dumbfounded, mouths agape, I smiled smugly and said, I told you, didn't I? This isn't something I could decide on my own. What I meant was that we'd discuss it with our parents. Did that not come across to you?
You tricked me.
I didn't trick you. I never once said Dad and Mom wouldn't be here. As I explained the plain truth, Holly bit her lip in frustration. Meanwhile, Grant, his face twitching nervously, bowed slightly to my parents.
Long time no see.
It's really been a long time. You hardly kept in touch. So it's been ages since we've even heard your voice.
Well,
Grant let out a groan in response to my father's pointed remark.
So, what position are you speaking from?
what do you mean?
I'm asking whether you're speaking as Emily's husband or Holly's.
Hearing my parents' words, Grant's face turned pale. I knew the two of them hadn't yet told my parents about their relationship. Of course they hadn't. How could anyone easily confess to their in-laws that they'd had an affair with their wife's sister, gotten her pregnant, and then divorced? Grant and Holly were likely waiting for the right moment to make it official or reveal the truth. They were probably planning to smooth things over with the arrival of a grandchild, banking on my parents' affection for the baby to excuse their actions. That kind of naive thinking was undoubtedly Holly's idea.
Of course, it's me.
Hey, stop.
Grant tried to intervene, but as expected, Holly ignored him completely and brazenly addressed my parents.
It's because Emily was a failure as a wife. Grant was struggling, so I stepped in to help him. That's how I ended up pregnant, and ouch.
Mid-sentence, Holly let out a sharp scream. The reason for her scream was the slap my mother had given her. Whether from pain or shock, Holly's eyes widened in disbelief as she stood frozen, and my mother glared at her, unblinking.
How shameless can you be, Holly? Do you even realize what you've done?
What?
If you don't understand, let me spell it out for you. What you two did is absolutely despicable.
Holly, still bewildered, received another slap across the face. This time, it was from my father, and the force of it made her body sway violently. My father's face was the angriest I had ever seen.
If you weren't pregnant, I wouldn't have held back. Be grateful to the child in your womb.
Why?
It was clear that my parents were genuinely angry. Holly was visibly shaken. She probably never expected to be scolded this severely. She must have thought that, even if she was reprimanded, they would eventually laugh it off and forgive her. She had probably said the same thing to Grant. Otherwise, there was no way she could have continued her relationship with him so shamelessly and carefree.
Why, you ask? Isn't it obvious?
You were Emily's husband. How could you do something so terrible?
However, our parents are usually kind, but they are the type of adults who know when to get angry. Holly had always been spoiled, or rather, had been allowed to be that way, so she had forgotten this.
But that's just how I've always done things.
How long do you plan on acting like a child? You're an adult now, and you're even pregnant. Do you really think this is acceptable behavior as an adult or a mother?
There you go again, talking down to me.
As I spoke to her in a disapproving tone, Holly glared at me sharply.
You're always like this. acting like you're so perfect and looking down on me. And telling to dad and mom makes you a coward.
It was true that I had told our parents about everything that had happened.
It's not tattling. Emily only shared the basic facts with us.
What? What do you mean?
Emily only shared the facts with us as an update about her recent situation. She never said a word about you or Grant being in the wrong.
Yes, I only conveyed the facts briefly as part of an update. It's true that I found it difficult to talk about Holly stealing my husband, and I felt ashamed. But more than that, I didn't want to make my parents sad. And that's why I made sure not to speak ill of Holly and Grant more than necessary. Yet, despite that, Holly and Grant went out of their way to hurt me, involving my parents and my home. Now that it had come to this, I couldn't overlook it. So I decided to tell my parents everything. And today, I had them waiting in the next room, so they could observe and judge the two of them.
Meanwhile, we haven't heard from either of you in a while. If there's nothing shameful to hide, sharing an update with your family is normal, right?
Silent.
On top of that, the way you've acted earlier, it's clear who's in the wrong. No need to even ask.
Seeing my father's stern gaze, Holly was left speechless and deflated. In the meantime, my father turned to Grant.
I thought I could trust you with Emily, but I was completely wrong. I shouldn't have recommended you in the first place.
The truth was, my father was an executive at the headquarters of the company where Grant and I worked. He had helped build the company alongside the CEO, and due to his connections and character, he still traveled widely and remained active even as he approached retirement age. Given his position, it wasn't difficult for him to speak on Grant's behalf when he was looking for a job. I hadn't realized how much he had actually done for Grant until recently, though. As for me, my father hadn't lifted a finger on my behalf, and I was relieved to hear that. After the divorce, I found a new job within the same company group, but my father had no involvement in that.
What do you mean?
I don't owe you any explanations. You're no longer an employee.
Wait.
Grant's eyes widened in shock at this unexpected turn of events, and my father delivered the declaration without mercy.
You're fired, Grant. And just to be clear, this is not a case of mixing personal and professional matters. You'll receive the official notice soon, so get ready. And Holly, you're disowned.
Why? How could you? I didn't do anything wrong. This doesn't make sense.
As Holly raised her voice, my mother grabbed her by the collar. With a fierce expression, my mother silenced Holly, then spoke.
Acting like this at your age. On top of that, cheating and getting pregnant. Have some shame for once.
Stop it. Don't be so angry.
For the next few hours, Holly was taken to another room where my parents gave her their final lecture. It was probably the last bit of parental love they could offer. Meanwhile, Grant stumbled out of the house, looking dazed. He probably returned home, but it wasn't his home anymore. It wasn't until about a week later that Grant and Holly realized what had happened.
What do you mean?
One Sunday afternoon, I was chatting with Ryan and my parents when I received a call from Grant, which left me feeling drained. To avoid letting my mood affect everyone else, I went to my room to continue the conversation.
I was told to move out because they're rebuilding the house.
Oh, that. Of course, you should have known. You do remember that house was originally a gift from my father, right? And the deed is still in his name. I could tell that Grant finally understood what I meant. As he stood there speechless, I clearly conveyed the truth as a small form of retribution. Eventually, I was going to let you have the house, but we're divorced now. So you no longer have any right to live there.
But I'm still with Holly.
I don't know what you're going to do with Holly, but she's already been disowned. Given Holly's nature, she was probably trying to win my parents over with fake charm at this point. But considering how much they had spoiled her, their anger toward her was deep. The situation wouldn't change easily. That's why, as soon as possible, you need to get out of there. It's going to bother the contractors.
What's so bad about that? I didn't do anything that bad to you, did I?
True, on the surface, Grant was an ordinary husband until the truth came out. He helped with housework and showed concern for me. But don't mess with me.
Huh?
When I voiced the anger I had bottled up inside, Grant let out a pathetic scream. You committed the worst betrayal a husband could make, and it was with your wife's sister, all while pretending nothing was wrong. Stop mocking me.
This wasn't supposed to happen. Holly said you wouldn't find out.
Do you think it's okay to cheat just because you didn't get caught? You and Holly are both really the worst. I couldn't help but be utterly appalled by Grant's pathetic excuses.
What do you mean? You didn't notice anything.
It seems like they had the speaker mode on. To defend Grant, Holly started throwing complaints at me. By the looks of it, it seems like they still don't understand anything.
Anyway, let's talk again. We can still find a future where we're both happy.
Are you aware of how shameless you're being?
I'm losing my job, okay? What's wrong with being desperate? Aren't you embarrassed?
At first, Grant seemed a little apologetic, but as he got cornered, his true colors began to show.
You're firing me for mixing business and personal matters. You're both the worst.
It's not mixing business and personal matters. You heard what my father said back then.
That's not how it works. You're ridiculous. I'm going to sue you both.
I just wanted to sigh. Now that he mentioned suing my father, I couldn't let it slide. It can't be helped. I'll talk to you one more time.
Really?
I could hear Grant's cheerful voice, but it was truly naive. It seemed that neither he nor Holly understood anything. Shaking my head in disbelief, I still made an appointment to meet with the two of them. So, what do you want from me? 3 days later, on a holiday, I was sitting across from Grant and Holly in a quiet cafe. Both of them had bloodshot eyes, and their nerves were clear.
Undo my disownment and give us back the house. Have your parents convince them.
Get my firing reversed too. Come on. You can do it, right, Emily?
As expected, they were making unreasonable demands, and I let out a sigh. As for the disownment, maybe I can consider it, but the house belongs to my father. Since it's his decision, there's nothing I can do about it. And as for Grant's firing, that was the company's decision, so even less I can do.
What? Why would I lose my job over families cheating?
Grant, did you actually read the firing notice?
I don't need to read it. I didn't do anything wrong.
Listening to the conversation honestly gave me a headache. Are they still trying to play innocent at this point? Or perhaps they truly don't understand the situation. To find out, I decided to ask Holly. Holly, haven't you heard anything from Grant?
What do you mean? There's no way Grant has done anything wrong.
Based on Holly's response, it seems like she's still trying to deny everything. No, it could be both. At this point, I feel a bit sorry for Holly, but ultimately, it's her own fault for having an affair knowing he was my husband. I spread something I had brought onto the table.
What is this?
It's the real reason why Grant got fired.
What are you talking about?
Grant, who had no composure left, tried to act aloof while checking the documents I had laid out. Once he realized what it was, he immediately tried to gather them up and hide them from Holly's view. But he didn't manage to collect them all, and Holly picked up the remaining papers and checked them.
What is this?
Holly exclaimed in shock after understanding what it was. It was only natural. What she saw was the evidence of Grant's affair. Moreover, the betrayal was not only directed at me, it was also a betrayal to Holly, with evidence of his affairs with women other than her.
Grant, what is this?
Emily, why do you have this?
Grant, prioritizing his own questions rather than answering Holly's painful one, showed his true colors again. It was disheartening to realize that this was who Grant truly was. But in order to finish him off for good, I gathered my strength and said, "There's no wife who wouldn't investigate her husband's behavior when a divorce is happening because of an affair, right?" When I was first told the truth, I was in shock and couldn't do anything. However, after I calmed down, I couldn't just accept what they did to me. I decided to hire a private investigator to find something I could use for retaliation. It might be pointless to investigate my relationship with Holly at this point. However, to my surprise, an unexpected result was delivered to me. It wasn't just about Holly. Grant had also been involved with other women. Looking back, Grant's face when he was being affectionate with Holly looked just like the time when he was careless about his relationships with other women. Having an affair with Holly must have triggered something in him, and he went back to his old ways. Regardless, there was no doubt that Grant had been involved with other women. And the worst part was who those women were. How stupid can you be, seducing women from your client's company and having an affair with them? And on top of that, getting special treatment from them for the business deal? That's a huge problem. Although the details were too much for even the private investigator to uncover, it seems they did receive some kind of data. So, I anonymously reported the information I had gathered to various companies. Naturally, the companies began their investigations, which were also communicated to our headquarters. I don't know exactly what the current status of the investigation is, but at the very least, Grant's actions have definitely been understood. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been fired. I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I hope just losing your job is the end of it.
What do you mean it's not just about losing my job?
Maybe it'll end up being a police matter? Grant was told in a calm manner, his face turning pale as he weakly let go of the evidence he had been holding. The evidence scattered across the cafe floor, but Grant remained oblivious, staring blankly ahead.
You got to be kidding me?
Ouch.
Holly slapped Grant's cheek. With his consciousness half lost, Grant collapsed helplessly to the floor.
You cheated on me while I was here? I can't believe this. I'm going to sue you for damages.
That's what I was going to say,
Oh,
I declared to Holly and Grant, who was still lying on the floor looking up at me with a shocked expression. I'm going to sue you too for damages. No complaints will be accepted.
You can't do that now.
I can. A claim for damages can be made within 3 years from the point you learn of the affair. It's been less than 3 years, right? And I have plenty of evidence. I have evidence from the private investigator, and Holly is currently pregnant. At the very least, if I were to take this to court, there would be nothing but advantages for me, nothing that could turn against me. It seemed like Grant understood this, and he fell silent, no longer able to say anything.
Emily, you're going to sue your own sister for damages? I'm the only sister you have in the world?
It seemed Holly understood that I was serious as she hurriedly tried to get closer. But it was too late. So, who exactly took your one and only sister's husband?
Well, that's...
I raised my voice and stopped Holly, who was trying to make excuses at this point. Don't try to look like a normal sister now.
Well,
I had never expressed this much anger toward her before. Because of that, Holly could only tear up, unable to say anything. But now, I no longer had any desire to comfort her. I will have my lawyer handle things from now on. Goodbye. Leaving the two of them, who had nothing more to say, behind, I left the cafe. I wasn't even interested in what words they exchanged afterward. It seems that Holly and Grant parted ways without getting married. Considering Grant's actions, it was an inevitable outcome. I demanded $20,000 in compensation from each of them. Grant used up all his savings and paid both amounts in full. With that, Holly cleared the compensation she was planning to demand from Grant. Around the same time, Grant officially resigned, and now he is struggling to find work and is working as a part-timer. It's unclear whether he'll be sued by the companies, but it seems he had even made a promise to marry one of the women he was cheating with, and is now facing a lawsuit. Holly is also demanding child support, and Grant is physically and mentally exhausted, to the point where he ended up sending me a message asking for reconciliation. Of course, I ignored him and blocked him without hesitation. Holly has sent several apology messages, but I purposely ignored them. Currently, Holly is staying with distant relatives. I assume it's because my parents couldn't ignore their granddaughter's misfortune and ask for help. However, she is living with people she's not very close to and who are not particularly kind, and it seems that Holly has completely lost her spirits. What happens after she gives birth will depend on Holly herself. I hope she remembers my parents' scolding and starts living properly. As for me, I am happily married to Ryan, just like before. I have moved out of my parents' house and now live in a house that was lightly renovated by my father after Grant and Holly left. Once work settles down, I plan to go on a family trip with my parents, combining it with the honeymoon we missed out on due to being busy at the time. I cannot replace Holly, but I intend to put all my feelings into it and do my best to honor my parents from now on.